Giving all praise and honor to God our Father, who doeth not some things but all things well. To Bishop Woods, who gives leadership to SCLC, to all of the officially of this SCLC organization, to all of the city officials, to all of the community leaders and activists, to all of the pastors, preachers, parents, and parishioners. It's good to be here. The Arabs said over 3,000 years ago that there were 4 things that never return. 1, spoken words. 2, spilled water. 3, lost opportunity. And then 4, spoken words, spilled water, lost opportunity, and then a speeding arrow. Those 4 things. What a great opportunity I have today to introduce and present our preacher. Let me be honest, I did not read, research, nor rehearse. I didn't read or research because I know him. I didn't rehearse because the truth need not be rehearsed. Thomas Beavers is a conscientious, courageous, and charismatic leader. He is one who is filled with passion. He loves people. God has given him a progressive spirit. He's full of energy because he loves meeting needs. He gives stellar leadership to the New Rising Star Baptist Church, one church, 4 generations. Amen. And that is literal. It will be around for generations, that it ministers to all people. Pastor Thomas Beavers is God's preacher. He's a faithful husband, son, grandson, father. He's a friend and brother much beloved. And he gives leadership to a ministry that ministers literally to the total man. Social justice is no foreign subject to that ministry. Education, any area that you want to delve in, he is touching that area, and the Lord is using him in a mighty way. I solicit for him your prayers as he shall come and share with us what the Lord has laid on his heart. Won't you receive now the honored and esteemed pastor of the New Rising Star Baptist Church, Pastor Thomas Beavers.
Praise the Lord, everybody. To God be all the glory for the great things he's done, the great things that God is doing, and the great things that God will continue to do. It's so good to be here today. Let's give God a hand clap of praise. We thank you for the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We thank you for the city of Birmingham, Alabama. Oftentimes in the ministry of Jesus, he passed through the city of Jericho. Mark chapter number 10, he healed blind Bartimaeus in Jericho. Luke chapter number 10, he gives to us the parable of the Good Samaritan who helped the wounded person that was passing from Jerusalem to Jericho. Luke chapter number 19, when he saw about Zacchaeus, he did it in Jericho. What amazes me is not that he passed through Jericho, but what amazes me is why he was able to pass through Jericho. Because passing through Jericho once upon a time was never an option for the child of God. The Bible declares in Joshua chapter number 6 that Jericho was the very first city inside of the promised land of Canaan, and it was straightly shut up with walls. That's the problem. The Bible also teaches us in Joshua chapter number 6 that God says to the children of Israel, who happens to be his chosen people, I've already given you the land. That's the promise. On the one hand, you see the problem, that the city is straightly shut up with walls. On the other hand, you see the promise. God says, in spite of what you see in the city, in spite of what is surrounding the city, I want you to understand that I've already given you the land. I want to pause right here for the specific purpose of speaking to all of us in here who believe in God's promises. Whenever God gives you a promise, it is always connected to a problem. And one of the major reasons that many of us have a hard time believing in the promises of God, because oftentimes when God gives us a promise, we can never get to the promise because we are focused on our problem. It's hard to believe, be not weary in well-doing, but in due season you'll reap if you faint not, when my problem is connected to his promise. It's hard to believe, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up on wings as eagles. They'll run and they won't get weary. They shall walk and they shall not faint. When my problem is connected to his promise. It's hard to believe, Numbers 23 verse number 19, that says God is not a man that he should lie, nor the son of man that he's able to repent. If he said it, shall he not do it? If he spoke it, shall he not make it good? When my problem is connected to promise. It's hard to believe, 1 Kings chapter number 8 verse 15, that the hand of God fulfills what his mouth speaks, which says that if he speaks it with his mouth, he's obligated to fulfill it with his hand, because there is one thing that God is incapable of doing, and that's telling a lie. But it's hard to believe it when my problem is connected to his promise. We turn in the opposite direction because we've yet to realize that fear closes more doors than failure ever will. Many of us fail to reap the promises of God, not because you tried and you failed, but because you were too afraid to try at all. But when it is that you have crazy faith, I'm talking about when it is that you have stupid faith, I'm talking about when it is that you have a faith that doesn't make sense, you do not allow the problem to put fear in your heart and turn you around the head in the opposite direction, but you make up inside of your mind, I'm going to move towards the problem, believing that God's going to fix it by the time that I get there, that I might be able to reap the promise. On one hand, we see the promises of God. He says, I've already given you the land. On the other hand, we see the problem. Jericho is straightly shut up with walls. And if in fact you were going to get past the problem and make it to the promise, it requires faith. Somebody shout faith. Don't put it up yet, Shayla. I want you to understand that faith is not denying reality, but faith is holding on to a reality that is more real than the one that you experience with your five senses. I wish you could hear what I'm saying. I'm going to say it again. Faith is not denying reality, but faith is holding on to a reality that is more real than the one I experience with my five senses. Faith is the unique ability to walk towards a closed door, believing it's going to open by the time that I get there. There anybody in here who's ever had the chance, the privilege, and the opportunity to walk through automatic doors? If you've ever had the opportunity to walk through automatic doors, logic says the door is closed, and because the door is closed, I need to turn around and head in the opposite direction. But even though logic says turn around, faith says keep walking towards a closed door. And if you have the nerve and the audacity to keep walking towards a closed door, it's going to open by the time you get there. I want to ask this question. Is there anybody in here who needs God to open doors inside of your life? Is there anybody in here who needs God to open doors inside of your marriage? Who needs God to open doors inside of your mind? Who needs God to open doors inside of your heart? Who needs God to open doors inside of your finance? Who needs God to open doors inside of your children's life? Is there anybody in here who needs God to open some doors inside of your life? God said if you have the faith, then God has the power. I wish somebody could hear what I'm saying. I'm going to say it again. If you have the faith, then God God has the power, because faith is the ability to walk towards a closed door, believing it's going to open by the time that I get there. On one hand, we see the promise. Joshua chapter number 6, he says the land is already yours. On the other hand, we see the problem. Jericho, the first city inside of the land that God gives them to conquer, is straightly shut up with walls. And God says that if you're going to conquer the problem, this is nothing for you to fight about. He says, I want you to organize a march. I wish you could hear what I'm saying. He says that if you're going to conquer the problem that is blocking the promise, I want you to organize a march. You're going to get it in just a minute. Dr. King was a drum major for justice. Before we walked into the Boutwell, we marched from Kelly Ingram Park. He says that if you're going to conquer the problem, I need you to organize a march. They organized a march. And the Bible declares they marched around the walls of Jericho one time on the first day, one time on the second day, one time on the third day, one time on the fourth day, one time on the fifth day, one time on the sixth day, and 7 times on the 7th day, for a total of 13 times. And at the end of the march, they shouted with a loud voice. And when they shouted with a loud voice, the walls came tumbling down. Logic says I'm not supposed to shout until the walls come down. Logic says that I'm not supposed to rejoice and give God glory until the walls come tumbling down. But faith says don't wait till the battle is over, but I gotta shout right now. In other words, faith is not just the ability to walk towards a closed door, believing it's going to open by the time that I get there, but faith is the ability to shout while the walls are still standing. And I want to know this afternoon, is there anybody in here who has some walls inside of your life? Is there anybody in here who can attest to the reality we got some walls inside of the city? Whenever black people don't like white people, and black people don't like white people, and white people don't like black people, there's walls inside of the city. When police don't respect citizens and citizens don't respect police, there's walls inside of the city. When parents don't respect children and children don't respect and obey their parents, there's walls inside of the city. Whenever churches can't fellowship and worship together because I'm Baptist, you Methodist, you Pentecostal, and we split by denominations, there's walls inside of the city. And God says that if you want the walls to come down, you can't shout when they come down. You got to shout right now. I'm going to say it again. He says, if you want the walls to come down, you can't shout when they come down. You got to shout right now. This is only for the people who know what it is to have walls inside of your life, and you're begging God, you need those walls to come down. Don't wait till the battle is over. I think it'll take 30 seconds and shout right now. I think it'll take 30 seconds and praise right now. I think it'll take 30 seconds and give God glory right now. I think it'll take 30 seconds and give God worship right now. Shout while the walls are still standing. They shouted in Joshua chapter number 6, and the walls came down. You didn't make it because of how smart you are. You didn't make it because of your education. You didn't make it because of your downtown connection. Today's freedom is because of yesterday's march. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a drum major for justice. He was a drum major for justice who led marches all over the United States of America. What amazes me is not that he marched, but what amazes me is why he marched. He marched for unity. But what I love about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is that although he marched for unity, he did it without sacrificing justice. I wish you could hear what I'm saying. I'm going to say it again. He marched for unity, but he did it without sacrificing justice. I'm going to say it again, chapters 1 through 3 are about what God has done for us. Number 1, he's already blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies. Number 2, you who are far away from God, he quickened and made alive who are dead in your trespasses and sins. Number 3, he's able to do exceeding abundantly above all I ask and all that I think according to the power that works inside of us. But after he speaks about what God has done for us, number 4 through 6, he gives our response to what God has done for us, which says that the goodness of God demands a response. Right here is clearly all the way through Ephesians chapter number 5 verse 21, he talks about my response in the family as husband and wife. Ephesians chapter number 5 verses 22 and 33, after he talks about my response as a Christian, he talks about my response as husband and wife. In Ephesians chapter number 6, he talks about my response as a parent and child, and my response as an employee and an employer. He then starts talking about spiritual warfare. And Paul could be here today, but he told me to tell somebody the reason I'm talking about spiritual warfare after I've talked about our response to the goodness of God is because there's a certain order that the family is supposed to be in, a certain order that the city is supposed to be in, a certain order that the nation is supposed to be in, but it's not going to happen without a fight. Take it by any means necessary, which is connected to a disparity in the educational system. When kids don't get a good education, they become a part of the working poor, which throws them back into the cycle of poverty.